Have you ever felt like you were growing, but at the same time somehow losing yourself? As if every step forward seemed to cost you a piece of who you used to be? It's a strange paradox. On the surface, you look like you're moving ahead, getting promoted, taking on new roles, forming new relationships. But deep inside, there's a quiet fracture, a voice whispering that something is slipping away. You can't quite name it, but you know it's real. It feels like the ground beneath you is shifting, and the more you try to hold on to the old version of yourself, the faster it crumbles. Jung once compared transformation to the serpent shedding its skin. That image is not just poetic, it's painfully true. For the serpent, letting go of its old skin is not a choice, it's survival. Without the shedding, it suffocates. But in the shedding, there is discomfort, vulnerability, even danger. That's exactly what growth feels like when you're in it. You're torn between clinging to what you've always known and risking everything to step into the unknown. And here's the truth. Most people mistake this stage for failure. They believe the anxiety means they are weak, that the emptiness means they are broken, that the confusion means they are lost. But Jung would say the very opposite. These are the signs you're standing at the threshold of the most dangerous, yet most necessary stage of your inner growth. Think about the moments you felt manipulated at work, when saying yes to one more demand felt like betraying your own soul. Or the nights when silence pressed down so heavily you couldn't tell if it was peace or loneliness. Or the mornings when you looked in the mirror and wondered, who am I even becoming? These aren't accidents. They are symptoms of a deeper process. Something within you is trying to awaken, and the price of that awakening is the death of an old identity. Jung called this stage the confrontation with the shadow. But you don't need to know the theory to feel its weight. You feel it when you can't laugh at the same jokes you once did, when the people around you accuse you of changing, when your old strategies of being loved or accepted suddenly stop working. Growth is not just about building. It's about dismantling. And dismantling, by its very nature, feels like destruction. So many people give up here. They think, if growth feels as painful, maybe I'm going the wrong way. But that's like the serpent trying to crawl back into its old skin. It can't. Neither can you. The anxiety you feel is not proof you're broken. It's proof you're alive, and something bigger is demanding to be born through you. Today I want to take you through the 5 unmistakable signs that you've entered this dangerous stage of growth. The very stage Jung believed was decisive for true transformation. You might already be in it without realizing it. And once you recognize it, you'll never see your struggles the same way again. But there's a warning. This stage is not only the gateway to your deepest power, it is also the place where many people lose themselves entirely. It is a place where the risk of regression, despair, or numbness is just as strong as the potential for freedom. That's why you need a map. And that's why we're here. Because if you've ever wondered, why does it feel like everything is falling apart just when I thought I was finally moving forward? Then you're already standing at the edge. And the next steps you take will determine whether this collapse becomes your prison or your rebirth. But what is this hidden stage of growth that almost no one dares to talk about? Jung believed that the most dangerous stage of growth is the one that forces you to meet the side of yourself you spent your whole life avoiding. It's not about achieving more or collecting new skills. It's about standing face to face with what you denied, buried, and rejected. He called it the shadow. And here's the unsettling truth. Real growth doesn't begin until you meet it. Imagine for a moment that your old self is dying, but your new self has not yet been born. You're caught in between, in a kind of inner limbo. It feels like stepping into a narrow passageway with the walls pressing on you, leaving no space to carry your masks, your excuses, or your false identities. Jung described this as a portal every person who seeks transformation must enter. But he also warned, it is a portal few endure, because to pass through it, you have to confront everything you most fear about yourself. One of Jung's patients once found himself trapped in this very stage. On the surface, he was successful, respected, admired, but inside he was crumbling. Night after night, he was tormented by dreams of being hunted, of faces without eyes staring back at him. He came to Jung desperate, saying, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Instead of trying to suppress the darkness, Jung invited him to face it. The patient resisted at first, terrified of what he might discover if he looked too closely. But slowly, through analysis, he realized that the hunter in his dreams was not an enemy outside of him, but a part of himself he had always denied. His rage, his selfishness, his hunger for freedom, it nearly broke him. For months he spiraled into doubt, confusion, and despair. But by staying in that tension, by not running away, something shifted. He emerged not destroyed, but clearer. He no longer feared his own darkness, because he had learned it was also a source of strength. This is the paradox Jung emphasized. The shadow is not there to annihilate you. It is there to complete you. Think about your own life. Have you ever been startled by thoughts that didn't feel like you? A sudden impulse to lash out, a jealousy you didn't want to admit, a secret desire you immediately tried to silence? Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and felt a flicker of fear, as if you weren't entirely sure who was staring back? Those moments are not accidents. They are invitations. They are the shadow knocking, asking to be seen. But most of us slam the door. We distract ourselves with work, relationships, or endless scrolling, anything to avoid hearing what our inner world is saying. Yet every time we refuse, the pressure builds. And eventually, the shadow bursts out in ways we can't control. An argument we regret, a breakdown at work, a silent resentment that poisons our closest bonds. That is why Jung spoke of the narrow portal. Everyone says they want transformation, but few realize it demands walking through this passage, stripped of illusions, confronted with truths that cut to the bone. It's like trying to walk through fire without burning. You can't bypass it. You can only endure it and let the fire change you. So here's the question. What happens when you find yourself in that portal and you don't know what to do? When you step into this hidden stage, the first thing you notice is how your daily life begins to feel strangely unfamiliar. The relationships you once tolerated start to suffocate you, not because the other person's changed, but because you can no longer play the same roles you once did. The mask you wore would be the good partner, the agreeable friend, the one who never made waves. It starts to feel like a costume that's crushing your chest. You smile, but inside, you know the smile isn't yours anymore. Work becomes another battlefield. The tasks that once gave you a sense of pride suddenly feel hollow. You show up, but a part of you whispers, "This isn't who I am. This isn't why I'm here." Promotions, achievements, even praise from others lose their power. They no longer feed you, because the hunger inside you is not for success. It's for meaning. And then there's the loneliness. This may be the hardest part, because it's not the loneliness of having no one around. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling unseen. You sit in conversations and realize how much of it is noise. You notice the shallow jokes, the rehearsed opinions, the ways people hide behind small talk. And the more you see, the more isolated you feel. It's as if you've woken up in a room full of people still asleep. This is a mechanism Jung warned about. Once your eyes open, they cannot be closed again. It's like noticing cracks in a glass window. The first time you see them, you wonder how long they've been there. And after that, you can't unsee them. Every time the light hits, the fractures gleam, reminding you that the glass is no longer whole. You can pretend it's fine, but deep down you know it's already breaking. Jung once said, "What we resist persists. What we look at transforms." And that's exactly what's happening here. The more you resist acknowledging your emptiness, the more suffocated it becomes. The more you run from the loneliness, the louder it echoes. But when you turn to face it, when you dare to name it, something begins to shift. Still, this stage is not a gentle awakening. It doesn't arrive wrapped in comfort or clarity. It arrives as an ache in your chest when you're with someone you no longer recognize. It arrives as a question you can't silence while you sit at your desk. Why am I really here? It arrives as tears that catch you off guard in the middle of the night when no one is watching. And once it starts, you can't go back. The mechanism is irreversible. Awareness cannot be undone. But here's the danger. When you begin to see the cracks, you face a choice. Some people, terrified of what those fractures reveal, try to plaster over them with distractions, addictions, or denial. Others let the cracks consume them, believing they are evidence of their own failure. Both paths lead to suffering, because the cracks are not there to destroy you. They are there to wake you. And yet, there is a silent threat. What happens if you see those cracks but refuse to face them? When you begin to see the cracks in your life, you face a choice: confront them or deny them. And if you choose denial, the consequences are heavy. Jung warned that the shadow, when ignored, does not vanish. It grows stronger in the dark, twisting itself into patterns that eventually take control. The first danger is isolation. The more you suppress what you see, the more distant you become from others. You still sit at the same dinner table, but you feel like a ghost. You still laugh at the same jokes, but the laughter doesn't belong to you anymore. Slowly you retreat, not physically perhaps, but emotionally, spiritually. You stop sharing what matters most because you fear no one will understand. And in that silence, the loneliness deepens until it feels like you are locked in a glass room, able to see the world outside, but unable to touch it. The second danger is exhaustion. Pretending is not free. It costs energy. Waking up every morning to play the role of who you used to be drains your soul. You drag yourself through routines that no longer fit, and little by little, the weight becomes unbearable. Some describe it as burnout, others as depression. Jung saw it as a psyche revolting against a life that no longer serves its truth. The body grows tired, the spirit grows numb, and the spark of aliveness dims. It is like carrying a suitcase, full of stones everywhere you go. Nobody else sees the weight, but you feel it in your bones, in the heaviness of each breath. Then comes the most terrifying danger of all, the loss of identity. When you resist the birth of a new self but can no longer live as the old one, you enter a no-man's land. You feel like a stranger to yourself. You can't answer simple questions. What do I want? Who am I? Why am I here? Every answer feels borrowed, rehearsed, shallow. It is like living in a house whose walls look sturdy, but are made of sand. A castle of sand, beautiful from a distance, admired by many, but with the first strong wave, it collapses into nothing. That wave might be a crisis, a betrayal, a sudden loss. And when it comes, everything you thought you were dissolves in an instant, leaving you naked before the truth you avoided. This is why so many confuse awakening with ruin. They begin the journey, feel the cracks, and then collapse under the weight of them. They mistake the breaking for destruction rather than the preparation for something greater. Jung watched patients crumble here, consumed by despair. Some turned to addictions to silence the chaos. Others hid in endless busyness, drowning their souls in noise. But underneath it all was the same truth. The refusal to cross through the narrow passage leaves you stranded, alive on the outside but hollow within. And here lies the paradox. The very chaos that threatens to undo you also contains the seeds of integration. The same waves that collapse the sandcastle can carve the foundation for something lasting. The shadow, terrifying as it is not only destruction, it is also possibility. Jung discovered that hidden inside the apparent ruin, there is a secret map, a map not drawn in words or instructions, but etched into the psyche itself, a path that, if followed, transforms the very darkness that once threatened you into the light that sustains you. Think of it this way: the cracks in the glass, the collapse of the castle, the exhaustion of carrying the old mask. These are not accidents. They are signals. They are invitations to begin the work of integration. Deny them, and you sink deeper into isolation, exhaustion, emptiness. Face them, and you uncover directions hidden in the chaos itself. This is why Jung insisted that the shadow is not the enemy. It is the guide. The breakdown is not the end. It is the threshold. But only if you dare to see the map inside the storm. Without it, the risks remain fatal. With it, the same stage that destroys so many becomes a doorway to freedom. And this map, once you recognize it, can completely change the way you live. If there is a secret map hidden inside the chaos, what does it look like? Jung called this path individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not pure, but whole. He believed that the shadow is not meant to be destroyed but integrated, and the journey of integration follows a pattern. It is not a straight road. It is a spiral that moves deeper each time. Still, there are steps, landmarks along the way. Think of them as the 4 coordinates on the map of transformation. The first is recognition. You cannot heal what you refuse to name. To recognize your shadow is to admit, yes, this anger belongs to me. This envy, this fear, this hunger, they are mine. Most people stop here because recognition feels like shame. But shame only blinds you. To see your shadow clearly is not failure. It is honesty. And honesty is the doorway to freedom. The second step is integration. This is where you stop treating the shadow as an enemy and begin to understand it as part of your own wholeness. That jealousy is not just poison. It's also the part of you that longs for authenticity. That rage is not just destruction. It's a fire that demands justice. Integration means you learn to carry your darkness without letting it rule you. It is not about silencing your shadow, but listening to it until it no longer needs to scream. The third step is conscious action. Recognition and integration remain theory unless they shape how you live. This is where practice matters. Instead of repeating old patterns, you pause before reacting. You write down your feelings before you project them. You practice silence before rushing into empty words. You say no without apology, and you let yourself feel the strength of boundaries. Conscious action is not about perfection. It is about small, deliberate choices that shift the direction of your life. And finally, the fourth step is legacy. Once you have faced your shadow, integrated it, and chosen differently, your pain transforms into wisdom. Your scars no longer shame you. They guide you. You begin to share what you've learned, not as abstract theories, but as living truth. Legacy does not mean writing a book or building an empire. It can be as simple as telling a friend, I understand, I've been there. Your presence becomes healing. Your story becomes a light in someone else's darkness. Jung often used the image of a mosaic to describe the self. A mosaic is made of broken pieces, fragments of glass or stone. Alone, they look sharp and meaningless. But when placed together with intention, they create a beauty that could never exist without the breakage. That is the paradox of individuation. The very fractures you once despised become the colors of your wholeness. You are not whole despite your shadow. You are whole because of it. So how do you live this in the small moments of everyday life? Start with micro-actions. Before reacting in anger, pause and write what you feel. Before drowning in noise, spend 5 minutes in silence. Before collapsing under guilt, practice saying no and feel the relief that follows. These are not small, they are the bricks of a new foundation. Transformation is not built in grand gestures, but in repeated acts of consciousness. And yet, even with a map, even with clear steps, there are hidden traps along the path. Because before true integration, the psyche often tries to trick you, offering shortcuts that look like progress but secretly keep you stuck. So the question is, what are these traps, and how do you avoid them before they ruin the journey? Every path of transformation comes with its dangers, and Jung was clear. The journey through the shadow is not only full of potential, but also full of traps. They appear subtle at first, disguised as progress, but each one has the power to derail the entire process. The first trap is ego inflation. Once you catch a glimpse of your inner depths, it's easy to mistake that awareness for enlightenment. You begin to feel superior, secretly convinced you see what no one else can. Suddenly, your wounds become medals, your solitude becomes proof of spiritual progress, and your insights turn into weapons to criticize others. Jung warned that this is a shadow wearing a crown, the ego inflating itself in the name of awakening. True wisdom humbles, false wisdom isolates. When the shadow is disguised as enlightenment, it poisons a heart with pride. And pride, Jung said, is always the beginning of blindness. The second trap is isolation. Once you see the mass in the world, it becomes tempting to retreat completely, to cut ties with family, friends, even community. You think, they'll never understand me. I don't belong anywhere. What begins as a desire for authenticity often hardens into exile. You stop sharing your truth, not because it has no value, but because you convince yourself no one can receive it. But individuation is not meant to exile you from humanity. It is meant to anchor you more deeply within it. Jung reminded us that wholeness makes you more human, not less. To withdraw completely is not liberation. It is avoidance. It is mistaking loneliness for holiness. The third trap is what Jung called projection, but we feel it as the savior complex. Once you touch healing, even a small part, you want to share it. You rush to rescue, to fix, to heal everyone around you. You give advice no one asked for. You demand others wake up as quickly as you did, and you become frustrated when they resist. But this is often a disguise for your own unfinished work. Healing others can become an escape from the harder task, healing yourself. Jung insisted that you cannot guide someone through a terrain you haven't crossed. The savior complex drains you, leaves others resistant, and delays your own integration. And then comes regression, the most dangerous trap of all. Transformation is frightening because the new self feels uncertain, untested, and vulnerable. When the discomfort becomes unbearable, the temptation is to crawl back into the old skin. You tell yourself, maybe I was happier before. Maybe I should just be who I was. It feels safe, but it is suffocating. It's like a butterfly trying to return to its cocoon, or a serpent trying to slip back into its discarded skin. The old identity no longer fits, but fear convinces you to force yourself inside it again. Regression is spiritual asphyxiation. History gives us warnings. Friedrich Nietzsche, the brilliant philosopher, saw deeper than most men of his time. He confronted the abyss without balance, without grounding, without surrender. He gazed too long into the shadow and lost himself, collapsing into madness. His life became a warning of what happens when you dive into the depths with no rope to pull you back. Contrast him with Meister Eckhart, the mystic who also journeyed inward. He faced the abyss, too, but instead of inflating his ego or retreating into exile, he surrendered. He did not cling to himself. He let go into something greater. He did not isolate. He stayed connected. He did not seek to save others prematurely. He allowed transformation to flow naturally through him. His path shows us that balance, humility, and surrender are the true safeguards against the traps of shadow. The truth is, these traps are not rare. They wait for all of us. Maybe you've already felt them. The urge to post every insight online, hoping others will admire your depth. The temptation to cut off relationships because they no longer validate your growth. The rush to lecture friends instead of listening. The pull to run back to the old version of you, simply because the new one feels too uncertain. Each is a fork in the road. Each determines whether you spiral back into unconsciousness or step forward into wholeness. The gift of Jung's work is that he never promised the absence of danger, but he showed us that awareness itself is protection. If you can name the trap, you can resist it. If you can resist it, you can walk past it. And when you do, when you survive ego inflation, isolation, the savior complex, and regression, something extraordinary begins to take shape on the other side. And now we arrive at the moment everything has been moving toward, the turning point where the breaking becomes a beginning. After the struggle, the cracks, the risks, and the traps, something unexpected begins to grow inside you. It doesn't happen in a single explosion of light. It comes quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, like the faint stirring of roots beneath the soil or the first drop of rain after a long drought. What once felt like emptiness slowly becomes a space of possibility. The silence that once suffocated now feels like a womb, carrying the weight of something about to be born. Picture yourself in a desert, vast, dry, endless. The kind of place where nothing should survive. For days you walk beneath a merciless sun, wondering if you will. Collapse before ever finding relief. And then, almost hidden, you see it. A tree, alive and blooming in the middle of the barren land. Its leaves are green, its blossoms radiant. How? The secret is not in what you can see, but in what lies beneath. The roots have found hidden water, deep streams that flow where the eye cannot reach. That is what rebirth is like. On the surface, you may look exhausted, even broken. But beneath, in the unseen depths of your being, your roots are drinking from a source that has always been waiting for you. This is a paradox of transformation. The new you is not an invention. It is not a mask you put on to appear strong, nor an image you craft for approval. The new you is the truest you, the one that was buried under years of roles, fears, and illusions. Jung taught that individuation is not about becoming someone else, but about uncovering who you already are. It is the unveiling of the authentic self that waited beneath the rubble of expectations, disappointments, and masks. And when that unveiling happens, everything begins to change. The relationships that once suffocated you shift because you no longer enter them with masks. You stop performing and start connecting. Work that once felt meaningless now becomes an expression of your values. Or you walk away from it entirely because you finally understand that your worth is not chained to productivity. Silence, once unbearable, becomes your sanctuary, a place where you meet yourself without fear. Even loneliness loses its sting because you discover your own presence is enough. The shadow that once haunted you now walks beside you, not as an enemy but as an ally, a reminder of your depth. Think of the mosaic again. At first, the broken pieces seem sharp, useless, dangerous. But when placed together with consciousness, they form a picture of astonishing beauty. Your life, too, becomes a mosaic, not perfect but whole. Each fracture, each scar, each loss contributes to a larger design that cannot exist without them. The pain was never wasted. It was raw material for the masterpiece of your becoming. And the moral of this entire journey is simple, though never easy. The shadow does not exist to destroy you. It exists to complete you. The same cracks that once terrified you are now the windows where light pours in. The same endings you once feared were actually the doorways to beginnings. The same silence that frightened you became the space where your soul could finally speak. What you thought was death was only transformation. What you thought was ruin was the seed of rebirth. So let this truth echo inside you. From the shadow is born the light no one can erase. If these words touch something in you, don't let it end here. Make it real. Write in the comments, "I choose my light." Declare it not for me, but for yourself, as a sign that you are choosing wholeness over fragmentation, truth over illusion, light over fear. And don't stop here. This is only the beginning. In the next video, we will dive even deeper into how to turn your shadow into your greatest source of strength, so that what once felt like your prison becomes a ground of your freedom.